So now today we are going to discuss the exception handling. What is the exception first? So in the exception handling, we'll be discussing many things. I'll tell you first what all things I'm going to discuss in the exception handling. Number one is types of, you can say, exception. You can say it. Number two, what is exception? Exception and error. How to, or you can say, handling of exception. Fourth one, writing, catch, and finally, fifth one, that is try with resources from JDK 1.7. Now next one is the sixth one, that is try with resource. Again, writing different types of exceptions throw and throws. Next now, handling of different types of exceptions. Okay, so in this now, first we are going to discuss the what exactly exception is and how we are going to discuss all about that. So I'll be just removing all that and I'll rub it out. Now in that first, if I'll ask you what exactly exception is, what is this exception in general? So I'm not saying that unusual behavior of anything which we can call it as an exception. I'm starting from the very basic, you can say, what exactly exception is and from where we're talking about the exception. So the number one point which we're talking about the exception is, let's say first one is a problem. What is that now? Problem. What is this problem is? We'll discuss about this problem. Whenever we write any program, whenever we develop any kind of application, so in that generally we used to get some kind of problems, right? So whenever we are developing any type of problem, whenever we are writing some kind of applications, in that some problems definitely will be there. In many forms we can call it as a bug, or we can say something in different forms. Different terminologies is being used for that. But out of all that terminologies, exception is a completely different thing which we'll be seeing here. So whenever in general we are writing any application, any sort of application, we are writing two problems we are getting in general. What is that two problems are? The two problems are, one is exception we are getting. Remember my point, what all things I am explaining you here. So what is exception? The second important point is error. So in our program, I can say in our program. So in our program we are getting two things. One is exception and the second one which we are getting is the error in our programs, right? So one is exception and second one is the error. Now in the case of exception also, there are some variety of exceptions which we are getting at the different situations, at the different locations we are getting. What is that? The one exception I am talking about, what that is the exception. The one which is there or which we are getting is the at the time of compilation of a program, we are getting some kind of exceptions. Whenever you are compiling your program, you are getting some exceptions, some sort of exceptions we are getting here, right? The next one now is when you are running the program, then you are getting some exceptions. These both options you are getting. Similarly, here also two things we are getting. What is that two things we are getting here? One thing which we are getting is errors. So in that error which means like some problem is there in our application, that's what error refers. So error 1 is again compile time error is there. When you are compiling the programs, at that time some errors will be there. Second type of error is the when you are running the program, then also we can get some errors. This is also one. And in that, the third important point is the logical errors. What we will call it as an logical errors. This is mainly three types of. So generally we get the following points or following ways or types of problems you can say here, right? I'll come to this exception later on. I'll come to these points. But before discussing this, I'm first starting this error. What is error? What is compile time error? Compile time error, like as when you are going for the exception handling, so in that one thing which is very clear, that compilation of a program, all of we know in a proper manner. So what is the compilation of a program? The compilation of a program is like when you have written the program and you are trying to compile which means you are trying to check. What you are trying to check now? You are trying to check whether what you have written it is correct in that predefined format or not. Whether it is able to adopt, whether it is able to understand that predefined format, it is according to that or not. Okay, well, if it is according to that, what you have written, what the programs which you have written, if it is according to that form, right? So in that case, if it is not there according to that, so it will give you some errors. It will give you some, you can say, kind of flags. Flags which means I am not using the name error, I am using the name called as flags. What flag it is raising that what you have written. What you have written in this, some problem is there, try to correct it. And if you will correct all that, then only I will be able to understand what exactly you have written in your program. Getting it my point? Which means that in the predefined specified manner, if the things are not there, so your compiler will not be able to understand your code, what you have written there, and that's the reason and that's the point where we are getting the compilation problem, where we are getting the compilation error. This is one point here. I hope you might be getting clear. What I'll do now, I'll make it clear here. What is that? Let's say, for example, what's that? For example, now I'm writing the first one is, I'm writing a class, suppose. Let's say some class, hello I am writing. See, the predefined format, what it says, that if any curly braces is starting, so that must be closed. This is what compiler is expecting also, that if you are writing anything, if any curly braces is, you have opened it and that must be closed here. So if anything which you are doing in this manner, so what happens, what works out in this form and what is going to be, like suppose you have started this curly braces and you are making it, or you are ending this curly braces here, right? So in this curly braces, like class hello, in that starting of curly braces, and again what you are doing now, closing of a curly braces you are writing inside this. So in this case, understand it. What compiler is expecting, that if something which has been started here, that must be closed. If it is not closed, then it will give the error. Like suppose some statements, generally what we know that any statement in the case of Java that must be ended with the comment line or semicolon, it must end. So if some statement which you are writing, any statement, let's say you are writing, and if it is not going to end with the semicolon, then that is also one problem for the compiler. What compiler says that, or you can say in the compiler library, it's already been defined that the statements or the curly braces or the closing braces which you are starting, that must be closed. Like statement must be ended with the semicolon. If it is not there, so these all type of problems which we'll be facing is a compilation problem, or we will say that as a compile time error. Now anytime, whenever we get any type of any sort of compilation problem, compilation error, if you are getting anywhere, if anywhere we are getting any sort of compilation error, so that must be sorted out by the developer itself who is writing that code. Because till the time you are not completing, till the time you are not sorting out the compilation errors, you will not be able to proceed further. You will not be able to proceed further, because if error is there, you can't do anything in that case. And if you can't do in that, means the further processing of the things which you cannot start in that, right? So for that, the first reason is you must have to avoid the compilation errors, and if you are avoiding the compilation errors, then only you can proceed the further. Even if some compilation error is coming due to the syntaxes, due to the other things, so what do you have to do, that syntax correctly you need to write in your program, and if you are writing the programs or if you are writing the syntaxes in a proper manner, then only it could be processed further, or else it could not be processed, right? So the one what we have seen is the compilation error which we have seen. Fine. Next, now here runtime errors. So one more thing in the case of compilation error. Why compilation error comes? So in one line what I can say is that compiler is inefficient to handle that problem. Compiler is inefficient to handle that problem, and because of that, that problem is coming. Compiler is not capable enough to handle that all things. If it is not capable enough to handle the things, then because of that reason itself, this type of problems comes in your applications. Okay. Now when I am talking about, see, I will be just removing the second issue which I am writing here. So this I was talking about the compilation error. Now I am talking about runtime error. This is what we are talking about, the runtime error is. What exactly the runtime error is here? Now let's say you are writing. See, exactly when we talk about the runtime errors, so runtime errors shows that JVM inefficiency, that my JVM is not efficient to do that task properly. That's what we will call it as an runtime error. For example, let's say I'll tell you some examples on the basis of that. What's that example? I'll just remove it out and I'll explain you properly what is the runtime error is. So I'm talking here, what's that I'm talking now? Runtime error. When I'm talking about the runtime errors, so in this runtime errors, you should understand clearly what exactly this runtime error is first. Suppose your program is, compilation is successful, everything is done, but something which is there, the primary requirement of your JVM, and on the basis of that, if you're not able to fulfill that requirement, that time itself it is going to give some kind of problem which is called as the runtime problem. And without that, or if this problem is not being sorted out, so what will happen is, like, your JVM will not be able to run the program. Fine. Let's say some example. Suppose we're talking about running the program. Suppose whenever JVM starts, let's say, whenever your JVM starts, JVM is trying to do something, JVM is running your program. So JVM needs some memory also. What memory needs? Internal memory, you can say. That memory which is being allocated for your heap memory. So whenever you are creating some objects, number of objects you are creating, accordingly heap memory is being consumed more and more. But one point will come where some shortage of memory problem is there, and that memory problem or that memory shortage will not be identified at the compile time. So when you are running the program, let's say when you are running the program, so in that again two options which you could get. If suppose some problem is there related to the stack memory, if some problem is there related to the stack memory, so java.lang. stack overflow error is going to come. This is also runtime error. Java.lang.stack overflow error, this is a runtime error. Whereas when I'm writing here java.lang. Now it's an out of memory error. This is two problems. What is this two problems? We just need to understand what is the type of problem it is, what is the nature of problem it is. If suppose your memory allocation is not there, you can't do anything, you cannot run this program, so there also JVM is incapable to do that. Similarly, if your heap memory is not there, so you can't do anything. And one more very important point, or I'm just telling you for examples what could be the problems or types. Suppose when you are not writing main method, or main method is not available in your program, so at that time also it will give the runtime error. Runtime error it is going to give when your main method is not available in your program. So when main method is not available, so at that time it is going to give the it is going to give the runtime problem, because as we know that mainly in the case of core Java, whenever we are writing any program, main method must be available with the corresponding signatures, or that is the predefined signatures. If the main method is not available in your program, so will not be able to write our program, will not be able to run our program, and will not be able to do the things, right? So that's the thing, like the main method. So this is one type of errors which I have explained, which is coming at the time of running the program, right? Okay. Now important thing about this is, now I hope it is clear to all of you. Now in that, suppose what next I am going to discuss is the next discussions which I'll be just doing here. What next discussion is the logical errors. Logical error I'm talking about. What is the logical error? Suppose you are writing a program to add the two number, right? Let's say I have written one program to add two number, 2 plus 2. According to the logic which we should get, or what the output we should get is the 4. The output which we should get is the 4. For example, I am taking a very basic examples. My main motive is that all of you should understand in a simple manner. The complex scenarios and all things we'll discuss later. So we are writing 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, we are getting, fine. Okay. When the 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, and suppose in case the result is coming here as an, or some, this is expected result, means it should come, this result should come if you are adding. But if it is, suppose you are getting 6, if you are getting 6, then it is a logical error. So logical error, which means something logic, wrong logic you have written in your addition of a program, and maybe that is creating some problem. So if it is creating the problem, we must have to solve that problem somehow, right? Because, and this logical errors, any type of logical error which is there, so that will not be caught by the developer or the development team. Because in the complex situations on the big projects, there is a separate testing team. That team will test about your things, like what is expected, what output is giving. So that again test team will send to again to the developers, like this is the problem, this is the bug in this, you try to solve it. So this is exact, and mainly problem with the logical error is, like logical error will not be, or will not be showing any kind of significance somewhere at the time of compilation or while you are running the program. It will show main at the, when somebody is testing, when, or you can say, if you are, it depends upon your design pattern, like what kind of options or what performance like you are doing in that case. So if it is not according to that, it will create the problem, and that you will be knowing later on. So this is what the logical error is, and it is, it means, if so, logical error will always be solved by the, again, developer, by understanding the complete logic of the program. Fine it is. Now, so hope you are clear with the errors, what is there in the case of errors. I'll be just rubbing on. So this was the one part of the problem. Like when I'm talking about the problem, so this was the one part of the problem. The second thing which again I'm talking about or will be discussing is, I'll just remove it out. In this exceptions, I'm removing this also, exception. What is exception? Suppose one question is there about the exception. What question is there? That if we know that here some exception is going to occur, so we will handle it or we'll do something. So if we know already some exception is going to occur, so why can't we handle initially itself? Generally, the students used to ask, or many of you might be having this question. So what is the use of writing the exception? Suppose, see, exception is the problem, or you can say, is something which is not there in your hand. Always, we need to deal with the client, right? What type of client? Suppose, let's say suppose your one website is there, one e-commerce website is there. Let's say your Amazon is there. In this now, if you're trying to purchase something, you're trying to generate some online bill. So when bill will be generated? When you will select something, when you will purchase some item, then only bill will be generated. Without selecting any item, if you want to generate bill, if you wanted to get something, you can't do that. Because the reason is, bill means what? Some amount you have to pay to them. When you have to pay some amount, when you will purchase something. When you are not purchasing something, how you will pay that amount, right? This is one like basic elaborations I am giving in that. So if some problem is there, something is there, then only we can talk about that, then only we can understand that what is going on in that, right? Because now throughout the globe, Amazon cannot stop. What it cannot stop, that please do not generate without selecting any bill, or please do not place any order without selecting. So they have to handle the things in a proper, they need to give the proper information to the user, that sir, or dear customer name, this, that you should not generate any bill without selecting, or we cannot generate any bill without selecting bins. That is unusual behavior. Usual behavior is that if I'm purchasing something, then I'll get the bill. Unusual scenario is if a customer comes to your shop and is asking that, give me the bill, I don't want to purchase anything. That is unusual behavior, you can say, right? That is the exceptional cases. So in order to handle that exceptions, we need to handle. What that shopkeepers has to tell, that sir, you have not selected some items, we cannot give you some bill. We are giving a proper message, right? We are giving some proper message, and if we are giving some proper message, that is only our need of the application developer. So exception occurrence is not depends on the developer, it depends upon the third party client, which you don't know what they can use, in what manner they can use, right? Okay. So in this exception also, I'll just be elaborating you the complete processes of the exceptions, like what is going to come and all. Like suppose the first one is,